They say a billionaire's heart is made of ice in quarterly reports. That empathy is a luxury reserved for people who can afford to feel. Nathan Cole believed that for 38 years, until a Tuesday morning when a tin blue lunchbox cracked open on his assistant's desk, and inside were 2 slices of bread so dry they could have been fossilized and absolutely nothing else. No butter. No filling. No explanation, just bread. And Maya Ellis, 28 years old, navy blouse ironed twice. Shoes that made no sound on marble. Closed that lunchbox like it contained state secrets, straightened her shoulders, and went back to formatting investor decks like her stomach wasn't eating itself from the inside out. Nathan should have looked away. CEOs don't notice assistants' lunches. They notice profit margins, hostile takeovers, and which board members are planning mutiny. But something about those 2 dry slices, about the quiet dignity of a woman who never complained, never asked, never broke, shattered something in him that 6 years of emotional frostbite had built. Because what kind of person eats dry bread in silence? What kind of life demands that level of invisible suffering? And what would it cost a man who'd forgotten how to be human to find out? This is the story of how a lunchbox melted a billionaire, and how 2 dry slices of bread became the most expensive meal Nathan Cole ever paid for, in ways he never saw coming. The glass walls of Nathan's corner office reflected nothing but steel and sky. At 7:14 a.m., the boardroom smelled like bergamot and leather polish. Cold surfaces, colder people. Nathan Cole didn't do warm. He did order. Contracts signed by 9 a.m., conference calls synchronized across 3 time zones, and a calendar color-coded down to the bathroom break. His assistant had quit last month, citing emotional frostbite, which Nathan found melodramatic but statistically accurate. The new secretary arrived that Monday, in a navy blouse that had been ironed twice and shoes that made no sound on marble. Maya Ellis, 28, references spotless, handshake firm but brief. She placed her bag on the desk outside his office, a canvas tote with frayed handles, and beside it, that lunchbox. Tin blue dented at one corner, the kind that carried ghosts of elementary school cafeterias. Nathan noticed because Nathan noticed everything. It was 11:47 a.m. when the latch popped. Maya opened it face neutral and he saw 2 slices of white bread. No butter, no filling, just bread slightly curled at the edges, resting on a paper towel. She closed it. Ate nothing. Got back to formatting the investor deck. By Thursday, Nathan had watched this ritual 4 times. The lunchbox opened at 11:47 a.m. Maya stared at the contents, always bread, sometimes an apple core, once a single cracker, then closed it and returned to work. She never ate in front of anyone. She drank water from a reusable bottle that had seen better decades. On Friday, Nathan broke his own rule. He left his office at 12:15 p.m., unscheduled, which made his calendar ping in distress, and stood at Maya's desk. She looked up, eyes careful, the way prey assesses a predator's trajectory. "Mr. Cole, I don't want to eat alone," Nathan said, which was a lie. He'd eaten alone for 6 years, preferred it that way, and had fired an intern once for attempting small talk during lunch. But the words came out smooth, rehearsed by some part of his brain that had woken up uninvited. He placed half a roast beef sandwich on her desk. Multi-grain bread, arugula, horseradish aioli from the bistro on 5th that charged $17 and made you feel like you'd earned it. Maya stared at the sandwich like it might explode. "I can't." "You can," Nathan said. "I ordered 2. I'm not going to finish both." Another lie. He'd ordered one, split it himself in the elevator, wrapped half in a napkin like some kind of emotionally stunted fairy godmother. Maya's fingers hovered over the sandwich. She glanced at her lunchbox, then at him, then at the sandwich again. "Thank you," she whispered. They ate in silence. Nathan returned to his office at 12:34 p.m. and realized he'd forgotten to check his phone for 19 entire minutes. The quarterly reports could wait. He had no explanation for why. By the following Wednesday, it was a routine. Nathan ordered 2 sandwiches, appeared at 12:15 p.m., left half on her desk. Sometimes Turkey Club, sometimes Caprice with balsamic reduction, once a banh mi that made her smile. Small, brief, like sunlight through a crack. "You don't have to keep doing this," Maya said on day 11. "I know." "Then why?" Nathan adjusted his cufflinks, a tell he'd trained himself out of in boardrooms but couldn't seem to control around her. "Because no one should have to eat bread that dry." Maya's jaw tightened. For a second, he thought she might cry. which would have been catastrophic for both of them. Instead, she nodded once, sharp, and took a bite of the roasted vegetable panini he'd brought. That night, Nathan's head of security, Garrett, a man who'd survived 2 tours in Kandahar and took no nonsense, knocked on his office door at 8:47 p.m. "Boss, you've been ordering double lunch for 2 weeks. You seeing someone?" "No." "Then who's the other sandwich for?" Nathan looked at him, expression flat. "Operational efficiency. I work better when my assistant isn't distracted by hunger." Garrett raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He'd learned long ago that Nathan Cole's lies came in 2 flavors, the ones he told clients and the ones he told himself. This was the second kind. 3 weeks in, Maya's mother collapsed. Nathan found out because Maya's phone buzzed at 2:14 p.m., a number saved as St. Helena Medical, and her face went white. She stood, grabbed her bag, and her voice cracked like ice over deep water. "I have to go. I'm sorry. I'll finish the Brennan contract tonight, I promise." "Go," Nathan said, "but the—" "Go." She left. Nathan stared at the half-finished contract on her screen, then at his own calendar. He had a meeting with the board in 40 minutes, a call with Tokyo in 90, and a reputation for prioritizing profit over people. He opened his phone, texted Garrett, "Find out which hospital," quietly. Garrett replied in 6 minutes. "St. Helena. Patient. Ruth Ellis, age 54. Heart condition. Admitted 1:47 p.m. Nathan canceled the board meeting. Rescheduled Tokyo. At 4:32 p.m., he walked into St. Helena's lobby holding a container of chicken soup from the place on 7th that his housekeeper swore could cure pneumonia. He found Maya in the waiting room, sitting in a plastic chair that squeaked, her hands folded in her lap like a child in timeout. She looked up, blinked. "Mr. Cole?" "Nathan," he said, because in a hospital corridor that smelled like disinfectant and fear, titles felt ridiculous. He sat beside her, placed the soup container on the armrest between them. "What are you doing here?" "I don't know," Nathan said, which was the first true thing he'd said in weeks. Maya stared at the soup, then at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "My mom's heart. They said it's stable now, but she needs medication we can't afford. Insurance doesn't cover all of it. I've been picking up extra shifts, but it's not enough. And Tessa, my sister, she's 16. She doesn't understand why we can't afford new textbooks when other kids have—" She stopped, shook her head. "I'm sorry. You didn't come here to listen to this. I came here because no one should sit in a hospital alone," Nathan said. He didn't mention that he'd sat in this exact hospital 6 years ago, watching his father die, surrounded by a board of directors who'd treated the old man's DNR like a hostile takeover. He didn't mention that the smell of antiseptic still made his chest tight. They sat in silence. Maya opened the soup, took a sip, and something in her shoulders unlocked. At 6:18 p.m., a nurse came out, gave the update. Ruth was stable, could go home tomorrow with new medication. Nathan stood, handed Maya a card. His personal assistant's direct line, not the office number. "If you need anything," he said. Maya held the card like it might vanish. "Why are you being so kind?" Nathan thought about the lunchbox, the dry bread, the way she never asked for anything, not even basic decency. He thought about the 6 years he'd spent building walls so high that kindness felt like structural failure. "Because someone should be," he said. He left before she could ask more questions. In the elevator, he realized his hands were shaking. The gala happened because it always happened. Cole and Ward's annual charity event where billionaires wore tuxedos and wrote checks to feel less guilty about offshore accounts. Nathan attended because his board insisted. He brought Maya because she'd returned to work the next Monday with her mother stable, her sister's textbooks purchased, and a quiet determination that made him want to punch something. "You don't have to come," Nathan had said on Friday, standing at her desk. "I want to. It's going to be insufferable." "So is most of life, Mr. Cole." Nathan almost smiled. "Nathan." "Nathan," she corrected, and the name sounded different in her voice. Less like a command, more like an invitation. The gala took place at the Ashford, where chandeliers cost more than most people's mortgages, and the champagne was imported from a vineyard that only sold to people who could pronounce Chateau d'Yquem without sounding American. Maya wore a silk dress, midnight blue, simple, devastating, and Nathan realized, standing beside her in the ballroom, that every man in the room was looking at her like she was the only thing worth noticing. Mr. Cole, a voice said, smooth as arsenic. Gerald Whitmore, CFO of Whitmore Industries, a man who'd tried to poach Nathan's top developers 3 times and smiled like a shark every time he failed. I didn't know you were bringing a date. Maya Ellis, Nathan said, his hand finding the small of her back. Protective, possessive, entirely unplanned. My executive assistant, Maya finished, extending her hand. Pleasure to meet you. Gerald shook her hand, eyes calculating. Assistant, of course. Nathan always did prefer efficiency over optics. The insult landed like a blade between ribs. Maya's smile didn't waver, but Nathan felt her spine stiffen under his palm. Actually, Nathan said, voice dropping into the register he reserved for hostile acquisitions, Maya restructured our entire client database in 3 weeks, something your team couldn't accomplish in 6 months. So if by efficiency you mean competence, then yes, I prefer that. Every time, Gerald's smile cracked. Maya's hand squeezed Nathan's arm. Gentle, grounding. A silent thank you that hit harder than any contract he'd ever signed. The rest of the evening unfolded in strange intervals. Maya handled every conversation with razor-sharp grace. When a board member's wife asked about her background, Maya talked about her mother's nursing career, her sister's robotics club, her own degree in finance that she'd earned at night school while working 2 jobs. She didn't apologize, didn't shrink. And when the photographer asked for a picture of Mr. Cole and his companion, Maya stood beside him, chin high like she belonged. Nathan realized, somewhere between the 3rd glass of champagne he didn't drink and the 4th conversation where Maya made a venture capitalist laugh with dry commentary about tax loopholes, that she did belong. Not because of him, because she was brilliant and kind and real in a room full of expensive ghosts. At 10:47 p.m., they stepped onto the terrace. The city spread below them, lights, noise, 1,000 lives colliding in the dark. Maya leaned against the railing, eyes on the skyline. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For making me feel like I'm not just the girl with the sad lunchbox. Nathan turned to face her. The wind caught her hair, and he wanted to say something profound, something that would explain the strange ache in his chest. Instead, he said, You were never just that. Maya looked at him, and for a second, a breath, a heartbeat. The space between them felt like a promise neither of them knew how to keep. Then his phone buzzed. Garrett's name on the screen. Nathan ignored it. You should answer that, Maya said. It can wait, but it couldn't because the text that followed, the one that lit up his screen at 10:52 p.m., read, Background check on Ellis came back. You need to see this. Nathan's blood went cold. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Infinite Stories for more emotional journeys and drop a comment. Have you ever met someone who changed everything with something small? The background check sat on Nathan's desk Monday morning like a grenade with the pin half pulled. He'd read it 3 times. Each time, the words rearranged themselves into the same impossible truth. Maya Ellis. Employment history verified. Educational credentials confirmed. Family medical records. Mother, Ruth Ellis, cardiac condition diagnosed 2019. Sister, Tessa Ellis, age 16, honor roll student. Financial records. 3 maxed credit cards, 2 personal loans, 1 defaulted student debt currently in forbearance. No criminal record. No aliases. No red flags. And then at the bottom, in Garrett's handwriting, she's exactly who she says she is. Clean as they come. Why did you ask me to dig? Nathan didn't have an answer. He'd asked because people lied. Because everyone wanted something. Because 6 years of running a billion-dollar empire had taught him that trust was a liability and vulnerability was blood in the water. But Maya Ellis wasn't lying. She was just surviving. At 9:32 a.m., she knocked on his office door holding a leather portfolio he recognized. The Brennan contract. Finished, formatted, perfect. She set it on his desk without meeting his eyes. Is something wrong? Nathan asked. No, Mr. Cole. Nathan. Nathan. She paused. Are you firing me? The question landed like a slap. Why would I? Because you've been looking at me like I'm a problem you're trying to solve. Her voice stayed level, but her fingers twisted the strap of her bag. And I know how this works. Rich men don't help people like me unless they want something, or they're trying to fix their conscience. So which is it? Nathan stood, walked around the desk. stopped 3 feet from her because closer felt dangerous for reasons he couldn't name. "Neither," he said. "I'm looking at you like someone who doesn't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Care about someone." The words hung between them, raw and unfinished. Maya's eyes widened. Then her phone rang, Tessa's name flashing on the screen. She answered, voice shifting into the careful calm of someone used to crisis management. "Tess, slow down." "What? When did this happen?" "Okay, stay there. I'm coming." She hung up, face pale. "My sister's school. There's been an incident. I need to—" "I'll drive you," Nathan said. "You have the Brennan meeting. They can wait." They took Nathan's car, a black Mercedes that probably cost more than Maya's annual salary. She gave directions in clipped sentences. Jefferson High School, East Side. The kind of neighborhood where police cars were more common than ice cream trucks. Nathan had never been to this part of the city. His charitable donations went to galas, not classrooms. They arrived at 10:18 a.m. Tessa stood outside the principal's office, a 16-year-old with Maya's eyes and a split lip that made Nathan's jaw tighten. A teacher stood beside her, Ms. Rodriguez, according to her badge, mid-40s, exhausted in the way educators get when the system breaks their backs. "Maya," Ms. Rodriguez said, relief flooding her voice. Tessa defended herself. The other girl started it, but the zero-tolerance policy— "What happened?" Maya asked, hands on her sister's shoulders. Tessa's voice cracked. "She said you were probably sleeping with your boss for money. Called you a—" She stopped, glanced at Nathan, then back at Maya. "I hit her. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have, but—" "You did the right thing," Nathan said, which made all 3 women turn to stare at him. He looked at Ms. Rodriguez. "What does the other student say?" "Her parents are threatening to sue for medical bills. Broken nose. The school board wants to expel Tessa to avoid litigation." Nathan pulled out his phone, dialed a number he'd never thought he'd use for something like this. "Marcus, Nathan Cole. I need a family attorney at Jefferson High School in 20 minutes. Pro bono." He paused. "Because I'm asking." "That's why?" He hung up. Looked at Tessa. "You're not getting expelled, and anyone who insults your sister answers to me." "Understood." Tessa nodded, eyes wet. Maya's hand found Nathan's arm, squeezed once, hard, grounding. The kind of touch that said, "I see you," louder than words ever could. The attorney arrived. The situation resolved itself by 11:47 a.m. No expulsion, no lawsuit, just a quietly worded settlement and a threat of countersuits if the rumors continued. Nathan's legal team didn't lose. Ever. In the parking lot, Tessa hugged him. Unexpected, fierce, the kind of hug that made his chest hurt. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." "Nathan," he said, because formality felt stupid when a kid had just bled defending her sister's honor. Maya waited until Tessa walked back inside. Then she turned to Nathan and her voice broke in half. "Why do you keep saving us?" "Because no one else will," Nathan said. "And because you're not something that needs saving. You're just someone who deserves not to fight alone." Maya kissed him. Brief, soft, terrified, then pulled back like she'd touched fire. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" Nathan caught her wrist, gentle but certain. "Don't apologize for that." The space between them collapsed. And for 11 seconds in a high school parking lot, Nathan Cole forgot he was a billionaire and remembered he was just a man who'd been hungry for something real. The kiss didn't happen again. Not Tuesday. Not Wednesday. By Thursday, Nathan had convinced himself it was a moment of adrenaline, gratitude, the kind of thing people did when emotions ran high and common sense took a vacation. But Maya's sandwich appeared on her desk every day at 12:15 p.m. And every day, she smiled. Small, real, the kind of smile that made quarterly earnings feel irrelevant. Friday brought the Cole and Ward Holdings Investor Retreat. Annual tradition, mandatory attendance, 2 days at the Seaside Grand where executives pretended to bond over trust falls and overpriced wine. Nathan hated it, had hated it for 6 consecutive years. But this year Maya would be there, executive. Assistants were required for note-taking, and the thought of 48 hours in proximity to her made his calendar stop feeling like a prison sentence. They arrived at 3:47 p.m. The Seaside Grand smelled like salt air and money, perched on cliffs where the ocean forgot to be gentle. Nathan's suite was on the top floor. Maya's was 3 floors down. which felt both appropriate and completely wrong. The first team-building session started at 5 p.m., a networking dinner where VPs drank scotch and complained about market volatility. Nathan sat at the head table, Maya beside him taking notes. Across from them, Richard Brennan, the client whose contract Maya had perfected, and his wife Diane, a woman who collected gossip like other people collected art. "So, Maya," Diane said, smile sharp as a scalpel. "How long have you been with Cole & Ward?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks. "And Nathan brought you to the investor retreat." "That's unusual." Maya's pen didn't stop moving. "Mr. Cole values efficiency. Is that what we're calling it now?" Diane laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "Richard, didn't Nathan's last assistant quit because he was emotionally unavailable? I'm surprised this one lasted 6 weeks." Nathan's fork scraped his plate. "Maya lasted because she's exceptional at her job. Unlike some people who coast on their husband's credentials." The table went silent. Richard coughed into his napkin. Diane's smile froze. Maya kicked Nathan under the table, gentle warning that said not worth it. He met her eyes, saw the amusement there, and something in his chest unclenched. Dinner ended at 7:34 p.m. Nathan walked Maya to the elevator, hyper-aware of the eyes tracking them across the lobby. "You didn't have to defend me," Maya said. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because Diane Brennan is a shark in pearls and I don't let sharks eat my people." "Your people?" Nathan pressed the elevator button. "My person." The doors opened. Maya stepped inside, held the door with one hand. "Nathan?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For today. For every day since the lunchbox." The doors closed before he could answer. Nathan stood in the lobby surrounded by executives who pretended not to watch and realized he was in so far over his head that drowning felt inevitable. At 9:12 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but instinct, the kind honed by years of hostile takeovers and corporate espionage, made him answer. "Mr. Cole." The voice was male, smooth, unfamiliar. "You should know that your assistant has been asking questions. About medical billing discrepancies at St. Helena, about insurance fraud. Thought you'd want to know before she causes problems." The line went dead. Nathan stared at his phone. Then he called Garrett. "Find out who just called me. And pull every medical record for Ruth Ellis from St. Helena. Now." "Boss, it's almost 10 now." 40 minutes later, Garrett sent the files. Nathan read them in his suite, the ocean roaring outside, and felt the floor drop out from under him. Ruth Ellis's insurance had been flagged. Overcharges, duplicate billing, procedures marked as experimental to bypass coverage. Someone at St. Helena was running a scheme, small enough to avoid audits, large enough to bankrupt families like Maya's. And Maya had noticed, had been quietly documenting, building a case, too proud or too scared to ask for help. Nathan checked the metadata on one of the scanned documents. Timestamp 11:47 p.m., October 9th, the night after the gala. Maya had been working on this while he'd been obsessing over background checks and his own inability to function like a normal human. At 11:03 p.m., Nathan knocked on Maya's door. She opened it in pajamas, cotton worn soft, absolutely devastating in their simplicity. "Nathan, what's wrong? Why didn't you tell me about the billing fraud?" Her face went white, then red, then some color that didn't have a name. "How did you—" She stopped, closed her eyes. "Of course you know. You're Nathan Cole, you know everything." "Not everything," Nathan said quietly. "I didn't know you were investigating alone. I didn't know someone threatened you tonight." Maya's hand gripped the doorframe. "What?" Nathan stepped inside, closed the door, showed her the unknown number, the timestamp, the threat disguised as courtesy. "Whoever's running this fraud knows you're close," Nathan said, "and they're scared. Which means you're right. Which means we're going to burn them down." Maya looked at him. Really looked. The kind of look that saw past the suits and the billions and the 6 years of ice. "Why would you help me with this? It's not your problem." "It became my problem the second someone threatened you." Nathan's voice dropped, and he realized his hands were shaking again, the way they had in the hospital corridor. "Maya, I don't know what this is between us. I don't know how to do relationships or feelings or any of the things normal people navigate without spreadsheets. But I know that if someone hurts you, I will raise their world to ash. And I know that you're not just my assistant. You haven't been since the lunchbox." Maya's eyes filled. Nathan, I'm not done. He stepped closer. You're brilliant. You're kind. You eat dry bread and save every dollar for your family. And you still smile like the world hasn't tried to break you. He stopped. The words lodged in his throat like shrapnel. Maya closed the distance. Kissed him slow and certain. The kind of kiss that felt like a door opening after years of standing in the cold. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "We're going to need evidence. Real evidence. The kind that holds up in court." Nathan smiled, the first real smile in 6 years. "Then let's get receipts." They worked through the night. Not in Maya's room. Too small, too intimate, too dangerous for what they were building. Nathan moved them to the business center, a fluorescent-lit room on the second floor where the only witnesses were photocopiers and the hum of the hotel's ventilation system. Maya spread the documents across 3 tables. Medical bills from St. Helena, each one flagged with sticky notes in her precise handwriting. Insurance denial letters, pharmacy receipts that didn't match prescribed dosages. Nathan contributed his laptop, Garrett's investigative reports, and 6 years of experience dismantling corporate fraud. At 1:47 a.m., Maya leaned back in her chair, exhausted. "How do you do this? Just decide to fight and win?" "I don't always win," Nathan said. "Yes, you do. Everyone says so. Nathan Cole doesn't lose." Nathan looked at her across the table, scattered with evidence of someone else's greed. "I lost my father 6 years ago. St. Helena Memorial, actually. Different wing, same hospital. He had a heart attack during a board meeting. By the time they got him to the ER, it was too late." Maya's hand stilled on the paper she'd been annotating. "Nathan, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. He was a bastard. Built this company from nothing. Destroyed 3 marriages doing it. And died surrounded by lawyers arguing over his estate before his body was cold." Nathan's voice stayed flat, but his knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. "The hospital billed us for services they never provided. Experimental treatments, consultations with specialists who weren't even on call that night. I paid it because fighting felt like admitting he mattered. But it was fraud. Same pattern as your mother's bills." Maya crossed to his side of the table, sat on the edge, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Is that why you helped me? Because of your father?" "No," Nathan said. "I helped you because when I saw that lunchbox, I remembered what it feels like to be hungry. Not for food, for someone to notice. My father never noticed. He measured love in stock prices and legacy in Forbes rankings. And I spent 6 years becoming him. Cold, efficient, untouchable. Until you opened that lunchbox and I realized I was starving." Maya's hand found his, squeezed. "You're not your father." "How do you know?" "Because your father wouldn't be sitting in a business center at 2 in the morning helping his assistant commit corporate espionage against a hospital." Nathan laughed, short, surprised, real. "Corporate espionage. That's what this is?" "What would you call it?" "Justice with better lawyers." They worked until 4:23 a.m. By then they had 17 documented cases of billing fraud, all following the same pattern. Overcharges for cardiac patients, targeting families without financial literacy, burying fees in medical jargon. The scheme had been running for at least 3 years. Netting an estimated $2.3 million, Maya held up a pharmacy receipt. Timestamp visible. October 3rd, 9:47 p.m. My mom's prescription. They charged her for name brand when they dispensed generic. $70 difference. She paid it because she thought that's just how hospitals work. Nathan photographed the receipt with his phone. Sent it to Garrett with 3 words. "Find the source." At 5:01 a.m., Garrett replied, "Billing manager. Sharon Voss, on duty during all 17 incidents. You want me to move?" Nathan typed, "Not yet. We need a witness." Someone inside. Maya looked at him. "I know someone, a nurse. She helped my mom during the last visit. Said something felt wrong about the billing, but she couldn't prove it. Can she testify?" "If we protect her." "We will," Nathan said. And meant it. The sun rose over the ocean at 5:47 a.m. Nathan and Maya stood on the balcony outside the business center, exhausted, wired on coffee, and the strange adrenaline of purpose. The retreat's official sessions would start in 3 hours. Breakfast at 8:30, trust falls at 10 war, synchronized team-building nonsense until someone suggested karaoke, and Nathan remembered why he hated these things. But Maya was beside him, hair catching the early light, And for the first time in 6 years, Nathan thought maybe trust wasn't a liability. Maybe it was the only thing worth falling for. "We're going to destroy them," Maya said quietly. "Yes. You could lose investors over this. Hospitals have powerful boards. St. Helena has connections." Nathan turned to face her. "Maya, I have $4.7 billion and a legal team that makes sharks look cuddly. They have a billing manager with a Costco law degree and a conscience made of expired coupons. This isn't a fight. It's an execution." Maya smiled, then kissed him. Soft, tired, tasting like bad coffee and better futures. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not just the lunchbox. Me." Nathan pulled her closer and the ocean kept roaring, and somewhere in the hotel 3 floors down, executives were waking up to their scheduled bonding activities. But here on this balcony with evidence of fraud and the beginning of something terrifying and real, here Nathan Cole learned that hunger could be satisfied. Not with sandwiches or charity or billion-dollar acquisitions, with someone who saw through the glass walls and stayed anyway. The retreat's second day started with disaster. Not the trust fall kind, the kind where Nathan's CFO, Robert Chen, pulled him aside at 8:47 a.m. and said, "We have a problem." "Define problem," Nathan said, watching Maya across the breakfast buffet. She was talking to Richard Brennan's assistant, laughing at something, and Nathan had the irrational urge to photograph the moment. "Diane Brennan is spreading rumors," Robert said quietly, "about you and Maya, saying you're compromised, that she's using you for money. 3 board members heard her in the spa. They're concerned about your judgment." Nathan's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "My judgment? Nathan, I don't care who you're sleeping with. We're not." Nathan stopped. Because they weren't, but they could be, and the denial felt like a lie he wasn't ready to sell. Robert sighed. "Listen, I've known you 6 years. You don't do relationships. You do contracts and clean exits. This, whatever this is, looks messy, and the board doesn't do messy. The board can go to hell, yes, I know, but think strategically. You're building a fraud case against St. Helena. If they find out you're involved with someone who has personal stakes, they'll use it. Character assassination, conflict of interest, every play in the book. Diane's already laying groundwork." Nathan looked at Maya. She glanced up, caught his eye, smiled. That small, real smile that made quarterly projections feel like cosmic jokes. "I don't care," Nathan said. "Nathan, I don't care, Robert. Let them talk. Let the board panic. Maya Ellis is worth more than every investor in this hotel combined, and if that makes me compromised, then I've been compromised since the lunchbox." Robert stared. "What lunchbox?" Nathan walked away, found Maya by the window overlooking the cliffs. She turned, saw his face, and her smile dimmed. "What happened?" "Nothing important," Nathan lied. "Nathan," he exhaled. "Diane Brennan is spreading rumors. The board's nervous. Robert thinks I'm making bad decisions." Maya's jaw tightened. "He's right. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have." She gestured vaguely at the space between them. "We should stop. Before it costs you?" "No. Nathan, I'm your assistant. You're a billionaire CEO. This doesn't work in real life. It works in rom-coms and lies people tell themselves." Nathan caught her wrist, not rough, just certain. "It works if we decide it works. And I've spent 6 years making decisions that killed everything soft in me. I'm not doing it again. Not for Diane Brennan. Not for the board. Not even for you if you're about to suggest we keep it professional." Maya's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that at 12:15 today I'm ordering 2 sandwiches, and I'm going to eat one with you, somewhere public where every gossip and board member and investor can see, and if they don't like it they can replace me. But they won't, because I'm very good at making them money, and they're very bad at finding someone else who can. That's insane. Yes, you could lose everything. I've already lost everything that mattered. I'm just now figuring out how to get it back." Maya searched his face. Then quietly, "What about the fraud case? If they think you're biased, let me worry about that." Nathan pulled his phone, texted Garrett, "Get me everything on Diane Brennan. Financial records, phone logs, medical history, and find out who she's connected to at St. Helena." Garrett replied in 30 seconds, already on it. "You're going to want to sit down for this one." At 10:47 a.m., Nathan sat down. Read Garrett's report. Then read it again, because the universe apparently specialized in irony. Diane Brennan. Board member, St. Helena Medical Foundation. Donor, $500,000 over 3 years. Sister of Sharon Voss, the billing manager running the fraud scheme. Nathan showed Maya the file. She went pale, then red, then some color that suggested violence was being barely contained. She knew, Maya whispered. She's been covering for her sister. And attacking you to discredit the investigation before it starts, Nathan finished. He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, the tell he couldn't kill. Change of plans. We're not waiting for evidence. We're going nuclear. Nathan, what are you? Trust me. At 12 noon, Nathan walked into the retreat's main ballroom, where lunch was being served to 40 executives who'd rather be checking their portfolios. He didn't sit. He stood at the front, and the room gradually quieted because Nathan Cole didn't make scenes. He made calculated moves. This was both. I have an announcement, Nathan said. His voice carried boardroom-trained command level. For the past 6 weeks, my executive assistant, Maya Ellis, has been investigating medical billing fraud at St. Helena Memorial. Fraud that targeted her family and at least 16 others. Fraud that's generated $2.3 million in illegal profits. And fraud that several people in this room have been actively covering up. The silence turned nuclear. Diane Brennan stood, face white. Nathan, you can't. Diane, sit down. Your sister's the billing manager. You're on St. Helena's Foundation board. You've been burying complaints for 3 years. And this morning you tried to discredit Maya to protect your own liability. Nathan turned to the room. I've sent all documentation to the state attorney general. St. Helena will be audited. Sharon Voss will be arrested. And anyone who aided in the cover-up, donor, board member, or otherwise, will be prosecuted. Richard Brennan stared at his wife. Diane, tell me he's lying. Diane's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Nathan looked at Maya, standing by the door, eyes wide. Maya Ellis is not my weakness. She's the reason I remembered what it means to do the right thing when it costs something, and if the board has a problem with that, they can vote me out, but they won't. Because I'm the only reason this company isn't underwater, and they know it. He walked out. Maya followed. In the hallway, away from 40 shocked executives and one imploding socialite, she grabbed his arm. You just committed professional suicide. No, Nathan said. I just committed to something real. Maya kissed him, hard, desperate, the kind of kiss that felt like free fall. When they broke apart, she whispered, they're going to destroy you. Let them try. But Nathan's phone was already buzzing. Garrett's name, he answered. Boss, we have a problem. Sharon Voss just filed a harassment complaint against Maya. Alleges she's been stalking hospital staff, fabricating evidence, and she's got a witness, a security guard who'll testify Maya broke into records after hours. Nathan's blood went ice cold. How is that possible? Because she did. October 9th, 11:52 p.m. CCTV footage shows her using a key card that wasn't hers. She was gathering evidence, but without authorization, it's technically breaking and entering. Nathan looked at Maya. She'd gone pale. I had to, she said quietly. They wouldn't give me my mom's records. I borrowed a nurse's keycard. I was going to return it. You just gave them everything they need to discredit the case, Nathan said. And for the first time since the lunchbox, he didn't know how to fix this. The drive back to the city felt like drowning in slow motion. Nathan drove, hands tight on the wheel. Maya sat beside him, silent, staring at the road like it might offer answers. It didn't. Garrett had sent updates every 15 minutes. 2:17 p.m. Sharon Voss hired legal counsel. Gerald Whitmore's firm. 2:34 p.m. Hospital-issued statement. Calling your allegations baseless and defamatory. 2:51 p.m. 3 board members requested emergency meeting. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. at 3:12 p.m., Nathan pulled into his building's underground garage. Cut the engine. Sat in silence that felt like shattered glass. I ruined everything, Maya said quietly. No. Nathan, I broke the law. They're going to use it to bury the case. Your board's going to force you out. And it's my fault because I was too proud to ask for help. Nathan turned to face her. You were too proud? Maya, I ran a background check on you. I had Garrett dig into your medical records without permission. I ambushed you with sandwiches and played white knight like some emotionally stunted savior. We're both guilty of doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. Nathan's voice cracked and he hated it. Hated that 6 years of control could shatter over a woman who ate dry bread and fought alone. I don't know how to do this, relationships, vulnerability, any of it. I know how to acquire companies and fire people and make decisions that destroy lives for profit. But I don't know how to protect someone. He stopped. Maya's hand found his. Someone you what? Nathan looked at their joined hands. Hers were small, calloused from work, trembling slightly. His were steady, manicured, useless. Someone I care about more than the board, more than the company, more than the 6 years I spent building walls so high that caring felt like structural collapse. Maya's eyes filled. Nathan, we barely know each other. I know you eat dry bread and never complain. I know you work double shifts and still smile. I know you punched a security guard to get evidence for your mother. I know that every day at 12:15 I count the minutes until I can sit with you and pretend I'm someone who knows how to be human. Nathan's thumb traced circles on her palm. That's more than I knew about my ex-wife after 2 years. Maya leaned her forehead against his shoulder. What do we do now? We fight. With what? They have the law. They have witnesses. We have the truth, Nathan interrupted. And we have something they don't. What? A nurse who's tired of watching families get destroyed. Nathan pulled out his phone. Dialed the number Maya had mentioned at the retreat, the nurse who'd helped Ruth, who'd said something felt wrong. It rang 4 times, then a woman's voice, cautious and hello? Ms. Rodriguez? This is Nathan Cole. Maya Ellis gave me your number. We need to talk about St. Helena Memorial. A long pause. Then, I've been waiting for someone to call. The truth is about to come out. Subscribe to Infinite Stories and let us know. Have you ever had to break the rules to expose the truth? Nurse Elena Rodriguez met them at a coffee shop 3 blocks from St. Helena Memorial. She was 42, exhausted in the bone-deep way of healthcare workers who'd survived 3 years of pandemic and came out the other side still believing in helping people. She ordered black coffee, didn't touch it, and spoke in the careful cadence of someone who'd rehearsed this confession 1,000 times. I've worked at St. Helena for 11 years, Elena said. Cardiac unit. I've watched Sharon Voss destroy families for 3 of them. Maya leaned forward. How? She targets patients without advocates. Single mothers, elderly people whose kids live out of state, immigrants who don't speak English well. She buries charges in medical codes, CPT 93,000 for a basic EKG, but she'll code it as 93015, which is a stress test, double the price. Insurance denies it, patient pays out of pocket. Elena's hands shook around her coffee cup. I reported it twice. Both times, administration said I was mistaken. Both times I got written up for creating workplace hostility. Nathan pulled out his phone, started recording. Do you consent to this being recorded? Yes. Can you testify in court? Elena's face went white. I have 3 kids. If I testify, they'll fire me. I'll lose my nursing license. They'll say I'm a disgruntled employee, that I falsified records. They won't, Nathan said. I'll make sure of it. How? You're a CEO. You don't know how hospitals work. They protect their own. Ms. Rodriguez, Nathan said quietly. I have $4.7 billion and a legal team that specializes in dismantling institutions that think they're untouchable. If you testify, I will personally guarantee your employment, your license, and your family's financial security. You have my word. Elena studied him, then looked at Maya. Is he always like this? Unfortunately, yes, Maya said, and something in her voice, fondness, exasperation, trust, made Nathan's chest tighten. Elena exhaled. Okay, I'll testify. But I need protection. Sharon has connections, hospital security, local police. She knows people. Nathan texted Garrett. Protective detail for Elena Rodriguez, 24/7. Starting now. At 4:47 p.m. they had a witness. At 5:03 p.m. Nathan's phone rang. The board. He answered on speaker. Nathan. It was Victoria Chen, board chair, voice like steel wrapped in silk. We need to discuss your announcement at the retreat. There's nothing to discuss. You accused a foundation board member of fraud in front of 40 witnesses. You've exposed the company to litigation. And you're personally involved with an employee who's now the subject of a criminal harassment complaint. This is untenable. Nathan looked at Maya. She was pale, hands clasped tight. He wanted to reach for her, but the phone felt like a spotlight, exposing every vulnerability. Maya Ellis is the most competent assistant this company has ever had, Nathan said. The harassment complaint is retaliation. And if the board wants to discuss litigation exposure, We should start with how many of you are on St. Helena's donor list. Silence. Then Victoria's voice colder. We're calling an emergency vote. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Either you resign voluntarily or we remove you. CO position, board seat, everything. You have 12 hours to decide. The line went dead. Maya stood, chair scraping. No, Nathan, no. This isn't worth your company. Yes, it is. I'm not worth your company. Nathan stood too, and the coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too public, too full of people who didn't understand that some things mattered more than quarterly profits. Maya, I built that company because I had nothing else. No family, no friends, no life outside glass offices and hostile acquisitions. And it made me rich and empty and so goddamn cold that I forgot what it felt like to want something that couldn't be bought. He stepped closer, voice dropping. You're not worth the company. You're worth more than the company. And if the board can't see that, then they deserve whatever soulless replacement they find. Maya's eyes overflowed. What if we lose? What if Elena's testimony isn't enough? What if Sharon walks and you lose everything for nothing? Then I lose everything knowing I tried to protect someone Nathan stopped because the word lodged in his throat like shrapnel, terrifying and inevitable. Someone you what? Maya whispered. Someone I love. The word hung between them, raw and unfinished. Nathan had never said it before. Not to his ex-wife, not to his father, not to anyone in 38 years. But here, in a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and other people's conversations, it felt like the only true thing he'd ever said. Maya kissed him. Hard, desperate, tasting like salt and coffee and the kind of future that couldn't be predicted on spreadsheets. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I love you too, and we're going to win. But at 7:23 p.m., Garrett called with news that made winning feel impossible. Boss, Sharon Voss just filed for bankruptcy. Personal Chapter 7. It's a legal shield. If she declares bankruptcy, the fraud investigation gets tied up in federal court for months. Maybe years. She's buying time. Nathan's hand tightened on his phone. What about the witness testimony? Circumstantial without the financial records. And her lawyers are claiming Maya's keycard theft taints any evidence obtained. They're pushing for dismissal. Maya grabbed Nathan's arm. There has to be something. Bank transfers, invoices, anything that proves she profited. There is, Garrett said quietly. But it's locked in St. Helena's financial system. And after your speech today, they've gone into full lockdown. No access without a court order, which takes weeks. Nathan looked at Maya. Saw the defeat creeping into her eyes. The same exhaustion he'd seen in the hospital corridor when Ruth was admitted. He thought about the lunchbox. The dry bread. The 6 weeks of watching her fight alone. Then we go tonight, Nathan said. Boss, what? We go tonight. Into St. Helena, get the records ourselves. Maya's eyes widened. Nathan, that's breaking and entering. That's exactly what you did. And if we're both guilty, they can't use it to discredit just you. Nathan stood, already calculating. Garrett, I need building schematics for St. Helena Memorial. Security rotation schedules, and a very good criminal defense attorney on standby. Nathan, this is insane. Yes. But so is letting Sharon Voss destroy families because we're too afraid to break rules that were designed to protect people like her. Nathan looked at Maya. I'm doing this. With or without you, Maya stood. You're an idiot, I'm aware. And I'm coming with you. At 11:47 p.m., the same timestamp as Maya's original break-in, which felt like cosmic irony, they stood in St. Helena Memorial's parking garage. Garrett had provided everything. Schematics, security codes, a USB drive that could clone financial databases in under 3 minutes. He'd also provided warnings, which Nathan ignored. This is a felony, Garrett had said. So is fraud, Nathan replied. They entered through the loading dock. Elena had given them her access code, technically aiding and abetting, but she'd smiled when she wrote it down, said, burn them all. The hospital at midnight smelled like antiseptic and fluorescent exhaustion. Nathan's heart hammered against his ribs, adrenaline making everything sharp. Billing office is 3rd floor, east wing. Maya whispered. They took the stairs, avoided cameras using the blind spots Garrett had marked. At 12:03 a.m., they reached the office. Maya's hand shook as she swiped Elena's keycard. The lock clicked green. Inside, 4 computers hummed in the dark. Nathan found the main terminal plugged in the USB. The screen lit up. Password protected. He tried the override code Garrett had provided. Failed. Tried again. Nathan, Maya hissed. Security's on rounds. We have 4 minutes. Nathan's fingers moved across the keyboard. Third attempt. The system opened. Folders, files, 3 years of billing records streaming onto the external drive. 2 minutes downloaded, 47%, 1 minute, 93%. Footsteps in the hallway. A security guard's radio crackling, checking 3rd floor, 89%, the door handle turned, 5%. Maya grabbed Nathan's hand. The download completed, 100%, and Nathan pulled the USB, shoved it in his pocket. The door opened. The security guard stared at them, mid-50s, tired, the same man who'd testified Maya broke in before. His hand moved to his radio. Don't, Nathan said quietly. Please. The guard looked at Maya. Recognition flickered. You're Ruth Ellis's daughter. Maya nodded. She's still on that heart medication? Yes, the guard's jaw tightened. My wife was on the same floor. They charged us for treatments she never got. We lost our house paying it off. He lowered his radio. You didn't see me. I didn't see you. And when this goes to court, I'll testify that Sharon Voss threatened me to lie before. He turned and walked away. Nathan and Maya stood frozen, then ran, down 3 flights of stairs through the loading dock, into the parking garage where Nathan's car waited like a getaway vehicle from someone else's life. They drove in silence until the hospital disappeared in the rearview mirror. Then Maya started laughing, breathless, borderline hysterical, the kind of laughter that comes after, you've just committed a felony with a billionaire and lived to tell about it. We just broke into a hospital, she gasped. Yes, you just risked everything, yes, for me. Nathan pulled over, looked at her in the dim light of the dashboard, and everything that mattered fit into this moment, her laughter, her tears, the USB drive in his pocket that held enough evidence to destroy Sharon Voss and save Maya's family, and prove that sometimes breaking the rules was the only way to fix a system designed to break people. For us, Nathan said, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world instead of 12 hours until the board vote that would end his career. At 3:47 a.m., Nathan's apartment looked like a war room. Garrett, Elena, Marcus the attorney, and Robert Chen, the CFO who'd warned Nathan about being compromised, sat around the dining table covered in printouts, laptops, and enough coffee to fuel a hostile takeover. This is everything, Garrett said, scrolling through the files Nathan had stolen. 3 years of fraudulent billing, 127 patients total, $2.3 million in illegal profits, all funneled through a shell company registered to Sharon Voss's maiden name. Elena pointed to a spreadsheet. That's the smoking gun. See these timestamps? Every fraudulent charge was entered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., when Sharon worked overnight audits. No witnesses, no oversight. Marcus, the attorney, studied the documents with the intensity of someone who charged $800 an hour and earned every dollar. This is admissible, barely. You obtained it illegally, but the exigent circumstances doctrine might apply. Imminent destruction of evidence, public interest, good faith belief in wrongdoing. Might? Nathan said. It's never guaranteed. But with Elena's testimony corroborating the pattern, the security guard's recantation, and the financial records showing profit motive, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. It's a strong case, strong enough to force a settlement. I don't want a settlement, Maya said. She'd been quiet, sitting at the edge of the table, but now her voice cut through the room like a blade. I want Sharon Voss arrested. I want every family she destroyed to get their money back. I want the system that protected her burned down and rebuilt. Marcus looked at Nathan. Your assistant has expensive taste in justice. She's not my assistant, Nathan said. She's my partner. And she's right. Robert Chen, who'd spent 6 years as Nathan's financial conscience, leaned back in his chair. Nathan, if you push for criminal prosecution, the board vote happens anyway. They're not going to reinstate you based on a feel-good fraud case. You'll lose the company. I know. And you're okay with that? Nathan looked at Maya. She met his eyes, and in that look was everything they'd built in 6 weeks. Sandwiches at 12:15, hospital corridors, trust falls they'd never practiced, and the terrifying certainty that some things mattered more than boardrooms. Yes, Nathan said. I'm okay with that. Robert's expression softened. the closest thing to sentiment Nathan had seen in 6 years. Then I'm voting to keep you, and I'll convince the others. Robert, Nathan, I've watched you turn this company into a machine. Efficient, profitable, soulless. And I've watched you become the same thing. But in the last 6 weeks you've been… Robert paused, searching for words. Human, messy, reckless, alive. And if the board can't see that someone who fights for what's right is exactly the kind of CEO we need, then they're idiots. And I don't work for idiots. At 6 a.m., Marcus filed an emergency motion with the state attorney general. By 6:47 a.m., prosecutors had issued a warrant for Sharon Voss's arrest. By 7:23 a.m., the news had broken. Local stations ran headlines about hospital fraud, billionaire whistleblowers, and evidence obtained through unconventional means. At 8:09 a.m., Nathan's phone rang. Victoria Chen. The board vote is postponed, she said, no preamble. Indefinitely. Why? Because 3 board members just resigned. Conflict of interest. Turns out they're all St. Helena donors. And because Robert made a very compelling argument about the optics of firing a CEO who just exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Victoria's voice shifted, something almost like respect creeping in. You're reckless, Nathan. And exhausting, but you're not wrong. Does this mean… It means you keep your job, for now. But the next time you break into a hospital, give me advance notice so I can prepare the PR team. The line went dead. Nathan looked at Maya, Garrett, Elena, Marcus, Robert, all these people who'd risked something for a fight that wasn't originally theirs. We won. No, Elena said quietly. The families won. We just helped. At 9:47 a.m., the police arrested Sharon Voss at her home in Westchester. The footage made the noon news, her in handcuffs shouting about persecution and frame jobs while reporters asked about the 127 families she'd defrauded. Diane Brennan resigned from St. Helena's Foundation Board, issued a statement through lawyers claiming ignorance. No one believed her. By 2:00 p.m., the Attorney General had announced a full audit of St. Helena Memorial. By 3:30 p.m., the hospital's CEO had resigned. By 5 p.m., Elena Rodriguez had received job offers from 3 competing hospitals, all promising better pay and whistleblower protections. At 6:15 p.m., Nathan and Maya stood in his office, the same office where she'd eaten dry bread 6 weeks ago, and watched the sunset paint the city gold. What happens now? Maya asked. Now we rebuild, Nathan said. St. Helena, the hospital system, everything they broke. And us? Nathan turned to face her. Maya Ellis, would you consider stopping being my assistant? Her face fell. Oh, I understand. After everything, and becoming my chief operating officer instead? Maya blinked. What? You restructured our entire database in 3 weeks. You exposed fraud I didn't see. You taught me that efficiency isn't everything, that compassion, justice, and doing the right thing matter more than quarterly profits. Nathan pulled a leather folder from his desk drawer, the same one he'd prepared weeks ago, updated now with new terms. Maya Ellis, underestimated, unbreakable, essential. I want you beside me, not serving me. Beside me, Maya opened the folder. The contract inside outlined salary, equity, decision-making power, everything that said partner, not assistant. Nathan, this is what you deserve. What you've always deserved. Maya kissed him, and the sunset kept burning. And somewhere in the city below, 127 families would receive settlement checks and apology letters, and the small, insufficient justice of being seen. The trial took 3 months to reach court. In that time, Nathan restructured Colin Ward Holdings' entire corporate responsibility program. Maya became COO with an office 2 doors from his, and they ate lunch together every day at 12:15, sometimes sandwiches, sometimes soup, once a celebratory steak when the state approved restitution funds for all 127 victims. Sharon Voss fought every step, hired Gerald Whitmore's firm, claimed prosecutorial misconduct, filed motion after motion to suppress evidence. But Marcus was relentless. Elena's testimony was ironclad. And the security guard, whose name was Thomas Way, whose wife had died 3 months after they lost their house, testified with the quiet fury of someone who'd watched justice fail once and refused to let it happen again. The trial opened on a cold January morning. Nathan and Maya sat in the gallery, hands clasped under the wooden railing. Sharon Voss entered in a gray suit that cost more than most people's rent, flanked by attorneys who looked like they billed by the breath. The prosecution's case took 4 days. Elena testified on day 2, calm, precise, devastating. She walked the jury through every fraudulent code, every late-night entry, every family whose medical crisis became financial ruin. She showed them Ruth Ellis's bills, the $2,147 charged for a stress test that was actually a basic EKG. She showed them Thomas Way's wife's records, the $6,392 in experimental treatments that were standard care. On day 3, the prosecution presented the financial records. Marcus walked the jury through the shell company, the bank transfers, the timeline that matched Sharon's work schedule perfectly. Every charge entered between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Every dollar funneled into accounts under her maiden name, Sharon Keller, that she'd claimed didn't exist. "These aren't mistakes," Marcus said, voice carrying through the courtroom. "These are crimes. Calculated, systematic, and devastating. Sharon Voss stole from families when they were most vulnerable, when they were scared for their lives, fighting for their loved ones, trusting that the hospital, the institution meant to heal, wouldn't destroy them financially while saving them medically." He held up Ruth Ellis's bill. "This woman nearly died. And while her daughter sat in a hospital corridor praying, eating dry bread because she couldn't afford food, Sharon Voss was in a billing office, adding charges for services never rendered." Sharon's attorney objected. The judge overruled. The jury took notes. On day 4, the defense presented their case. They claimed Maya had fabricated evidence, that Nathan had orchestrated a vendetta, that Elena was a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. They showed the CCTV footage of Maya breaking in, suggested she'd planted the fraudulent records herself. Nathan's knuckles went white. Beside him, Maya sat perfectly still, but he felt the tremor in her hand. Then the prosecution called their final witness, Thomas Way. Thomas walked to the stand slowly. He was 63, retired security guard, widower. He wore a suit that had seen better decades and a wedding ring he'd never taken off. "Mr. Way," Marcus said gently, "can you tell the jury about your wife, Linda?" Thomas's voice cracked. "She had a heart condition. We caught it early. Doctor said with medication she'd be fine. But the bills St. Helena charged us for treatments she never got. We couldn't afford it. I took out a second mortgage, then a third. We lost our house. The stress—" He stopped, swallowed hard. The stress made her condition worse. "She died 8 months after we moved into an apartment we could barely afford." "And did Sharon Voss's billing contribute to those charges?" "Yes, I saw her in the office that night. October 9th, when Miss Ellis broke in. I was supposed to testify that Maya was alone, that she'd fabricated everything. But I saw Sharon's records on that computer. I saw my wife's name. And I couldn't—" His voice broke completely. "I couldn't let her destroy another family." The courtroom was silent. One juror wiped her eyes. The judge called a recess. Sharon's attorney tried to discredit Thomas on cross-examination, suggested his grief had clouded his memory, that he was unreliable. But Thomas had kept every bill, every receipt, every collection notice. He presented them one by one, physical evidence with timestamps, charges, Sharon's digital signature buried in the metadata. The defense crumbled. On day 5, closing arguments. Marcus stood before the jury and said simply, "Sharon Voss stole $2.3 million from families in crisis. The evidence is overwhelming. The witnesses are credible, and the law is clear. Find her guilty. Give these families justice." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. At 4:47 p.m. they returned. "We, the jury, find the defendant Sharon Voss guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Maya's hand squeezed Nathan's so hard it hurt. Thomas Way cried, quiet, exhausted sobs. Elena smiled, something fierce and vindicated. Sharon Voss showed no emotion, just stared ahead as the judge set sentencing for 6 weeks out, recommended maximum penalties, and ordered immediate asset seizure for restitution. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Nathan gave a brief statement, nothing fancy, just facts. Maya stood beside him, and when a journalist asked if she was his girlfriend, Nathan said, "She's my partner," in every sense of the word. The photo made the evening news. Nathan and Maya, hands clasped, standing in winter sunlight that looked almost warm, 6 weeks later, Sharon Voss was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The restitution fund distributed $2.1 million to 127 families. Ruth Ellis received a check for $8492.73. Every fraudulent dollar returned plus interest. She cried when Maya showed her, then made her daughter promise to never eat dry bread again. Tessa got into MIT's robotics program with a full scholarship. At the acceptance ceremony, she gave a speech about her sister's courage. And Nathan sat in the audience feeling things he'd forgotten existed. Pride, hope, the terrifying certainty that family didn't require blood, just showing up when it mattered. St. Helena Memorial underwent complete restructuring. New CEO, new billing system, new oversight protocols. Elena Rodriguez became head of patient advocacy, making triple her previous salary. Thomas Y. was offered a settlement for his wife's case, $250,000, an apology, and a plaque in the cardiac unit honoring Linda Way's memory. Colin Ward Holdings implemented new ethics guidelines. Robert Chen called it the Maya Ellis principle. Profit matters, but not more than people. 3 board members resigned over it. Nathan didn't care, and on a Tuesday in March at 12:15 p.m., Nathan knocked on Maya's office door. She looked up from her computer, chief operating officer now, running operations that made the company both profitable and decent, and smiled. "Lunch?" Nathan asked, holding 2 sandwiches from the bistro on 5th. Always. They ate on the rooftop, the same rooftop where Maya used to hide during breaks, back when she was just an assistant with a dented lunchbox and dreams she couldn't afford to speak out loud. Nathan had transformed it, added a table for 2, chairs that didn't fold, a view of the city that looked less lonely now. "I have something for you," Nathan said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Maya raised an eyebrow. "If it's another contract renegotiation, I'm going to throw this sandwich at you." "It's not a contract." He placed a small blue box on the table. Tiffany's, because Nathan didn't do subtle. Maya stared at it like it might explode. "Nathan, open it. Inside, a ring. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the March sunlight and threw rainbows across the table. Not flashy. Not billionaire trying too hard, just right. Maya Ellis," Nathan said, and his voice shook in a way that boardrooms had never managed to break. 6 months ago, I was a man who measured everything in profit margins and thought compassion was a liability. Then you opened a lunchbox and I remembered what it means to be hungry for something real. You taught me that courage looks like dry bread and still fighting. That justice matters more than reputation. That love," he stopped, exhaled. "That love is the only thing worth building a life around." Maya's eyes filled. "I don't have a speech prepared," Nathan continued. "No PowerPoint, no quarterly projections. Just this, I love you. I want to eat lunch with you at 12:15 every day for the rest of my life. I want to fight beside you, fail beside you, build something that matters beside you. Maya Ellis, will you marry me?" Maya looked at the ring, then at Nathan, then at the city spread below them. All those buildings, all those lives, all that noise that suddenly felt quiet. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you infuriating, reckless, wonderful man. Yes." Nathan slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, which felt like the universe finally getting something right. They kissed, and somewhere below the city kept moving. Ambulances and taxis and people carrying lunchboxes and fighting their own battles. But up here, on a rooftop that used to be Maya's hiding place and was now their beginning, everything felt possible. 3 months later, they got married. Small ceremony, just family and the people who'd fought beside them. Ruth Ellis walked Maya down the aisle, her heart stable, her smile bright. Tessa was maid of honor, wearing a dress she'd picked herself and confidence she'd earned. Elena and Thomas sat together, witnesses to a love story that started with fraud and ended with justice. Robert Chen officiated because he'd gotten ordained online specifically for this, said it was the least boring thing he'd done in finance. Garrett stood as best man, made a speech about how he'd never seen Nathan smile before Maya, how love made even billionaires human. The reception was held at the Seaside Grand, the same hotel where Nathan had made his declaration, where the board had tried to destroy him, where everything had nearly fallen apart. But this time, the ballroom was filled with people who'd fought for something real. The toast wasn't to quarterly profits. It was to courage, justice, and the stubborn refusal to accept that some people mattered more than others. Nathan's vows were simple. I promise to order 2 sandwiches, always, and to never let you fight alone. Maya's were simpler. I promise to keep challenging you, and to love you even when you're being impossible, which is most days. They danced to a song neither of them knew but swayed to anyway, and when the photographer asked them to smile, they didn't have to fake it. On a Tuesday morning in June, Nathan and Maya stood in front of the newly rebuilt St. Helena Memorial. The old billing office was gone, replaced by a patient advocacy center. A plaque outside read, "In memory of Linda Way and all those who deserved better. May we never forget that healing includes dignity." Inside, families met with financial counselors who explained bills in plain language. A hotline connected patients directly to oversight, and every employee went through ethics training that included case studies, real families, real harm, real consequences. It wasn't perfect. The system was still broken in 1,000 other ways. But it was better, and better mattered. Maya squeezed Nathan's hand. "We did this. You did this," Nathan corrected. "I just showed up. You did more than that. I learned from the best." They walked back to the car and Nathan thought about the lunchbox, still in Maya's office, kept on a shelf like a reminder. They'd filled it that morning with real food, sandwiches, fruit, cookies Maya had baked the night before. Not because they needed it, but because some symbols deserve to be reclaimed. No one should eat alone. No one should fight alone. No one should be invisible just because the system was designed to overlook them. These were the principles Nathan Cole lived by now. Not because they made him richer, but because they made him human. And because a woman with a dented lunchbox had taught him that hunger could be satisfied, not with money or power or billion-dollar acquisitions, but with someone who saw you, really saw you, and stayed anyway. The moral: compassion is not a weakness. It's the strongest foundation for any relationship, any business, any life worth living. True power isn't control. It's the courage to fight for what's right even when it costs everything. And love? Love is showing up at 12:15 with sandwiches and staying for the battle that follows. What would you have done in Nathan's position? Would you have risked everything for justice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, subscribe to Infinite Stories for more emotional journeys, where courage meets compassion. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And remember, you are seen, you are valued, and you deserve someone who shows up with sandwiches.